Putin failed again. The Crocus City Hall attack. Future danger warning. This is what we're gonna talk about today. Today we will discuss what is actually important to know about that attack. I didn't plan to make another video on that. Even in the first video was mostly about Putin's failure and in Ukraine and in Russia. And this was in general about what happened. And I guess you know already that people went to see the concert and they got attacked. Over 140 people were killed. This is not about it. This is about what Putin is trying to show us and what actually we need to see, what is actually important. And another thing is a warning about potential danger. I'm not sure how real it is, but it was done by Vladimir Osechkin, the creator of channel Gulagu.net. And we will talk about it, and you will write me in the comments what do you think about this. But I think that if there is a warning like that, we should pass it on just to be sure that people are aware about what potentially can happen. So let's go. Hello everyone, I'm Elina, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share, write comments. Let's make truth available for everyone. This is what helps to promote it on YouTube. Thank you. This is my channel, and in my recent video, Putin's failures in Ukraine and Russia, I'm talking about that terrorist attack in more detail and showing and explaining what happened. But today we're gonna discuss different things. First of all, the attack happened in Moscow. Moscow is basically a cyber prison of a city, when the cameras are on every corner. And if in this city, when some people put a flower to the grave of Navalny or to the monument of the people who are victims of political repressions, immediately in seconds appears FSB, police, whoever, and the people get arrested, they get beat up, and this and that. This time, the huge attack happened in Moscow, near the Moscow Circle Road. So it's basically, it's not downtown, of course, but it is Moscow. 4 people came by white car, and then they left by the same car, didn't even bother to change their license plates. What is important is that Putin failed. Putin's FSB, whose duty is protect Russian people from that, failed. And failed so miserably that Putin even himself was tipped off by the United States and some other countries about potential attack. Why they sit on their hands? The FSB is supposed to be all about counterterrorism, and yet they failed big time, again. And people holding a blank piece of paper, coming to the streets, appear, and they immediately get arrested. Even if they share their thoughts about Ukraine. In one of my videos, like in this one, there is an English version of it. Russian women in Putin's prisons. They put in jail 72-year-old grandma for 2 posts supporting Ukraine and feeling sorry for Ukrainian people who died in Putin's war. She got 5.5 years in jail for that. And yet, terrorists happened to do that atrocity in Russia, in Moscow, not somewhere in Siberia, nowhere when there is no cameras, there is no police. There was police right in the next building, FSB was nearby, they could walk in a half an hour there, not even drive there. Russia has helicopters, Russia has everything, and yet the people wasn't protected at all. I already started to get messages from Russian trolls saying Anglo-Saxons, which is again, it's FSB term, which they use now a lot, doesn't give a second thought about Russian people. Yes, they do. That's exactly why they warn Putin. And not only Anglo-Saxons. Iran, of all places, alerted Russia to security threat before Moscow attack. Even Iran know about this terrorist group, and they warned Russia about this. What Putin did? Putin not only ignored it, he laughed at it, and I showed in my video his speech on the FSB conference when he was saying, oh, it's a provocation, an attempt to destabilize Russian society. So you're welcome to check out that my video and find out more about, even see Putin himself talking on that conference and saying that. So what about the National Guard of the Russian Federation, who was chilling near Crocus City Hall? Why did they take forever to show up? An hour and a half it took them to show up, when the bad guys left in about 20 minutes. And then just hang about, busting and beating up journalists instead of getting to work. It took them a whole hour and a half to finally enter the building and start doing something. And Russian people were dying. They were choking on the smoke, dying of wounds. And nobody, not ambulance, not firefighters, were allowed to enter the building and help people. Because the FSB, the National Guards, basically soiled their pants. The bad guys just get back to the same car, didn't even bother to change license plate, and left. And they drove hundreds of kilometers on Russian main highway, full of cameras, towards actually Belarusian border, not Ukraine. But today we're gonna talk about different thing. And I'm showing you these people for a reason. After the FSB and whoever, National Guards, police, washed their pants from the brown stains, they decided finally to pursue the bad guys. And eventually they caught those 4 people. This is what happened to these people. They are not criminals. They wasn't charged by the court. Their guilt wasn't proven whatsoever. It was just people in the car who Russian authorities grabbed, tortured. One of them lost his eye. Another one ear get chopped off and fed to him. He was forced to eat his own ear. Another guy was rolled in the court on a stretcher because he was from intensive care. He lost his conscience. Another guy had electrodes attached to his genitals and tortured by electric current. This is what Russia do with people who just are suspects. This is what I was talking to you about all the time. Russia doesn't have laws, doesn't have constitution, doesn't have human rights. This is what important to know. This is what Putin is trying to present to the world. Look at me. I'm doing what I want and nothing happens. So this is the future. This is the Russian reality. This is the future everybody who support Putin abroad want to their country. And the stupid Russians, some of them smart, some of them really stupid, they are thinking that it's okay, and some foreigners even wrote to me on Quora, to do it to these people. And it's not, because today they're doing it to them without any court, without any lawyers, without any help. Tomorrow they're doing it to you. And Russia already have been there. It's all in Stalin times was happening and so on. And Russia did torture prisoners in the jail. I have a video about this. Apparently, I was tortured in Russia. This my video is telling about that it happened in Russia before. It was happening all the time. The problem is that it was hidden. At least they was bothering to hide it and pretend it doesn't happening. And it wasn't happening on a mass scale. Now they throw away all the pretenses. At all. Now it is normal thing to do. And they openly showing to the world that they brought guy from intensive care in the court after they beat him up and tortured. And Russians okay with it. I don't see any protests or anything. And whoever tried to say what I'm saying, if they're guilty, it should be proven and they should be punished. But nobody should be in this kind of condition before even anything happened. Before they're guilt proven, before anything. This is what happened. Right now, in 21st century, in Russia. And another man from Chechnya, Ashab Uspanov, he was arrested in Moscow. And now, after torture, his suicide was... they pretended he committed suicide. And now saying, oh, that's not true. It's just he killed himself and so on. But he died in police custody after being tortured. The guy who wasn't even proven of anything, wasn't even caught in that car with the rest of them. It was just a guy from Chechnya. Truth is, Putin not only failed to protect Russia, its border, and its people. Putin is the reason they were in danger and targeted in the first place. And then he spins this yarn and supposed to Ukrainian hand in the attack, basically admitting that his administration couldn't guard Russian borders to save their lives, letting folks supposedly from Tajikistan stroll across Ukraine border like it's nothing. He pretending that they came from Ukraine, which isn't true. And this is just torturing suspects and so on. This is all what you need to know about Russia. When you look at those people I showed you, all you need to know about Russia. Russia tortures people and show it off like it's some badge of honor. There is no law, no constitution, no presumption of innocence, no human rights in Russia. And Putin is usurper, parading as a president, but since he declared himself in power, it was his duty to look after Russian people, and he failed. Putin regime is crumbling, dragging Russia down with it, kicking Russians, killing Russians and Ukrainians, left and right. Now we'll talk about another important thing. It's not just Putin's fault that people died and his FSB and so on couldn't protect them. He was the reason that those bandits from ISIS, special group from ISIS, one of the most radical group, killed these people. He is the reason they were in Russia in the first place. Why did they attack Russians? It's because Putin, Surovikin, and Putin's army attacked people in Syria. Why did they attack people in Syria? To distract the world at the time from the war in Ukraine, from Russian invasion of Ukraine, annexation, illegal annexation of Crimea, and trying to grab parts of Donbass at the time. That is why Putin decided to help his puppet Bashar Assad in Syria, and Russia did atrocities there a lot. The same thing they did in Ukraine, the same thing they did in Georgia. It's just a little story on that in Aleppo, when Russia bombed that city into the ground, Russian tanks and actually Assad regime used chemical weapons to poison his own people. Russian tanks was driving around on the perimeter of the blocks and shooting at everything which coming out of the rubble. If it's a child, then a child. If it's a dog, it's a dog. If it's a woman, it's a woman. And this is one of the parts why those bad guys attacked Russia. I condemn terrorism. I condemn those bad guys. Don't take me wrong. I'm not saying anything good about it. But Putin did the same thing, and he's doing the same attacks in Ukraine every day. Killing Ukrainians, killing people, killing civilians, killing Ukrainian army, which has nothing to do with Russian attack on Ukraine. Russia attacked Ukraine. Ukrainian army as peaceful civilians as everybody else. They didn't attack Russia. Putin attacked Russia and committing huge terrorist attacks in Ukraine every day. But the reason why those terrorists came to Russia, it was partly because of Syria, because what Putin's army did in Syria. Yet they were cowards. They didn't get after people who actually responsible for that. Putin, Surovikin, and many others who actually did it to Syrian people. These bad guys soiling their pants and afraid to do so because Putin has an army to protect him. He has national guards, he has police. So they go in after innocent people, which is complete stupidity in my opinion, because if somebody did it the same thing to them and their families, I highly doubt that these bad guys would say, wow, those poor people attracted our attention now. Let's go to our politicians and demand to be more sensitive to their cause. Would they do that? I don't think so. They would be about revenge, and they would definitely not sympathetic to anything they have to say. So it was plain stupid and plain like a coward, acting of cowardness. But we are now talking about the main bad guy, Putin. Why he's the main bad guy? Because he's milking the situation. He's using the death of these innocent Russian people who came to the theater to his advantage, to blame it on Ukraine, to instigate that Russians will be against Ukrainians and wanted to take part in his useless, aggressive war. This is outright disgusting, what is happening. The idea of blaming Ukraine is wrong. The bad guys proved that they did it. They released a video when they actually doing this. Disgusting and horrible video. And now it's a bit ridiculous to see how the Islamic bad guys trying to argue with Putin and being upset. How dare you to say it was not us? We proved it was not us. It was us. How dare you to say that it was somebody else like Ukrainians? How could you? So they might commit more crimes like that just to prove Putin wrong. And more innocent people gonna die because of that. Now let's talk about another important things. These men are, this is a lawyer Mike Fagan, and this is Vladimir Osechkin. I might have showed you him before. He is a creator of a channel and the website Gulagu.net. He is he is defending human rights and helping out some people from like Wagner or Russian army who want to not to take part in this war and defect abroad and give statements to the Hague court and so on. And he has a lot of experience dealing with the FSB and some other GRU and some other силовики, so-called, in Russia. What he's saying in this video, in the conversation with Mr. Fagan, several important things. Number one, you saw that Russia torturing these guys who they arrested and thinking they are the criminals who guilty in the attack on Crocus City. What is happening? They trying to beat them up into the pulp and make them to confess that Ukraine is behind all of this. In opinion of Mr. Osechkin, Putin is trying to collect that information, write it down and make videos or whatever, and then pass to the American candidate to be a president, Donald Trump. Trump is already Putin's puppet, and Putin is expecting Trump to show Putin's narrative that look what Ukraine did to us, feel sorry for Russia and Russian people, and so on. We will see, I guess, how right he is or not. We will see what Trump will say, and we will see what will happen about it. And why Trump would be interested. Number one is Crocus City Hall means something for Trump personally. His beauty pageant in 2013 happened in Moscow. And it happened in Crocus City Hall. Even on this picture you could see Crocus City Hall. And Trump personally met Agalarov, the owner of the Crocus City Hall, and Russian Putin's friend, and so on. And so it's kind of personal even for former American President Donald Trump. But the most important is not even that. The most important that Putin, after his fake so-called elections, usurped power in Russia. He is not legitimate leader. But after that situation, after that horrible attack, even some countries started to feel sorry for Putin and say, oh, mostly not for Putin, but for Russian people, but they express their condolences to Putin. And so they kind of legitimized his regime. And it will gonna continue. Because according to Mr. Osechkin, he personally know about the situations in the FSB, and for example about the situation when the authorities of Turkey caught one of the ISIS members from Russia, Russian citizen, and they give him to Russian authorities. Here, we got your bad guy. Take him. Russians basically reduced his sentence to something minimal for like illegal possession of weapon or something like that. Give him a new life, new documents, and send him right back to Turkey as a FSB agent to be in ISIS. And FSB and GRU of Russia, mostly FSB, are trying to influence those criminal organizations, illegal in Russia and in many other countries, and not to prevent terrorist attacks, but basically influencing them to creating more of them. And according to Mr. Osechkin, this is an important warning, which, again, you can write to me in the comments what do you think about it. I decided to pass it on because human lives may be at stake, and better be safe than sorry. So Osechkin is saying that by influencing those organizations, FSB can create several different attacks in different countries, the countries who are supporting Ukraine right now, just to show people in the world that, look what Ukrainians are doing, look how bad they are, we shouldn't support them. Putin is losing the war. With the support of the West, and my previous video is all about it, in the article of the ISW, that if we fall for Putin's bluff, that's the only chance for Putin to win. But the point is, his main goal right now is to divide Ukrainians, split them up, and help them, Putin, to win the war. And on the other side, he wants to reduce or stop support to Ukraine. And for that, anything can happen and anything can work. Even the attacks in some countries and blaming Ukrainians for that. I hope it wouldn't happen. I hope Osechkin is wrong. But we will see about that. Just in case, I decided to warn you. Putin already used the situations like that. That was happening in Syria and some other stuff when they said, oh, we have a common problem, we have a common enemy. Let's unite against the world terrorism. We're gonna help each other. We are in the same boat. Look what happened. We're gonna really stood up together and unite and sit at the same table and have a common, we have a common enemy, we have to unite. This is the goal what Putin wants to achieve. So just because it happened in some other countries, they will have to sit at the same table with Moscow people, and they will try to stop so-called terrorism, organized, in fact, by Russia. On the other hand, Osechkin is thinking that Putin, if the connections between Putin and FSB and those bad guys would be found and proven, this is up to the people in different countries and the special agencies in every country to find out these connections and make sure this is not gonna happen. And Putin wouldn't play us like a violin. To play on the tragedy of people, to make his goals achieving to defeating Ukraine. We need to remember who Putin is, who Russia is. And this is what Russia was doing all along in occupied territories. They were torturing people just like that. We have to remember Putin is the terrorist number one. Putin is the bad guy here. And we're not going to unite with him. We will unite with Ukraine. We will support Ukraine. We will stand by Ukraine. And Putin will lose. Thank you for your attention. Learn the truth and stay informed. See you later.